Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, he is a leadership consultant, he's a keynote speaker, and he is an advisor, a close advisor to 8-figure CEOs. His incredible journey just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
So as they say, it's lonely at the top. There are countless CEOs in this country who surround themselves with yes men and yes women, and so no one is telling the CEO the truth. And sometimes you need somebody to do that, to show you your blind spots. That describes my next guest perfectly, Rocky Garza. He's a leadership consultant, keynote speaker, and advisor to 8-figure CEOs. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear your journey. How did it start?
Yeah, great. So I I grew up in Dallas, Fort Worth area. Been there, got kind of my whole life, but I lived all over. I went to 15 schools before I graduated from high school. Parents got divorced when I was young and kind of moved all over. And I say that because I think it is really pertinent to where I'm at today, is sort of the journey we have before we get to where we are now. And so I think in looking through that, I moved a ton. I didn't know that the term first day of school didn't mean the first day out of school until I was in 6th grade. And so, but I think because of that, I learned very quickly if I could outthink you and outtalk you and sort of outwit you, outschmooze you, if I could find a way to use words and speed up fast enough to get your attention so when the time was right, we could really, and that was sort of my survival mechanism growing up. And so I think taking that now, you get through college and you kind of get out into the world. I was in full-time ministry for about 8 years right out of college. Then I was a wedding photographer because that makes perfect sense. And that was sort of my first jump into the entrepreneur space. And from there, found out we were pregnant with our son about 10 years ago. And my wife said, Rocky, if you could do anything for the rest of your life, what would you do? And I didn't say this eloquently, although I like to believe that I did. I said, if I could attempt to become an expert at anything at the end of my life, I would want to be a people expert. How do I take my life experience, 8 years of ministry, which I would just define as deeply caring for people. At that point, 5 or 6 years of entrepreneurship. If I could squeeze all that together and help anyone with anything, today, 41-year-old Rocky would say, how do I help high-level leaders find the intersection of a deeply meaningful life and a wildly successful career? And I think we have spaces in both areas. We have lots of folks going work-life balance and build the life you want. We have folks going KPIs and revenue and grow your business and go to 9 figures. And I rarely find an individual who has ever found only one of those and actually found satisfaction. And so what would happen if we found the intersection of those two places? It would require us to answer questions we're typically not being asked.
Wow, I can see why you're so successful. You just have a gift with words. He's an amazing and electrifying keynote speaker. Let's go ahead and show his sizzle reel.
I believe that every one of you here right now knows exactly who you are. The reality is I have found that many of us, often in fact, the thing that we miss is that we tend to be illiterate when it comes to being able to describe who we are. We lack the ability to describe the thing that we feel inside. I'm not asking you to write anything down because I think I'm going to tell you something so profound you've never heard it in your life. I'm telling you going to write it down so that you don't forget something you may have heard for the 15th time, and on the 16th time it might actually stick. Statement number 1 is this. I want you to write this down. I am wildly unique and extraordinary, and there's no one in the world like me. Let me be very clear. I'm not telling you that to try to puff you up or make you feel good. I'm telling you that you're wildly unique and extraordinary, and there's no one in the world like you, because I believe it's physiologically impossible for there to be another human being exactly like you. Identical twins shouldn't be called identical. They should be called similar twins, because it's impossible for there to be anyone in the world like you. But I'm not telling you that because I'm trying to prove that you're so special. I need for you to come to the foundational and fundamental belief that until you are willing to recognize the reality and the truth that there is something extraordinary about you, you will consistently live an ordinary life. It's impossible for you to make a decision for anything other than ordinary until you believe that you are worthy and valuable of something other than ordinary. Yet I believe this statement cannot live by itself. I lived 30 plus years of my life believing this statement, but believing it to the point that I felt like I had to prove to you that I was extraordinary. Because if I didn't, then you would leave me just like my dad did. I lived 30 plus years of my life believing wildly unique and extraordinary, there was no one in the world like me, but I was going to perform my way to make sure that you understood that I was the most amazing thing in the world. I'm waiting to write this down next to this statement. But I'm 100% regular, meaning I'm no more or no less valuable than anyone to my left or to my right. I just said this is the statement on the other side of the tension, but I believe there's something really beautiful that happens when we hold the tension of these two statements collectively together. I believe opportunity and freedom and clarity of who we are exists when I go, there's no one in the world like me, but let me tell you something, there's no one in the world like you either.
Wow, I am so inspired. And as I was watching you, I totally see the preacher piece. You're still a preacher, only you have a different congregation.
Yeah, I think I find over the last decade or so, there's a proverbial window to someone's soul that gets left open there at work. And if you think about it, we spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week at minimum, many of us in a single place with a group of people that we have a collective heart and a collective mission. And even if the KPI ultimately is growth and revenue, we still have this collective spirit. And so I think there's this proverbial window to our soul, if you will, that gets left open at work. That we don't think anyone's going to try to get in there. So we don't necessarily close it all the way because it's sort of what we would refer to as our authentic self, our whole, bringing our whole self to work. Maybe we've heard in our corporate spaces. I find that if we can find a way to create a space of vulnerability, which is just creating the opportunity to see and be seen by others, that somehow that window tends to find itself opening. And when we can allow someone to open the window to their soul in a way that feels genuine and real and they desire to, it's amazing the kind of clarity that an individual can find out about themselves, the kind of collaboration that can be built on a team, and most importantly, the kind of effect that can create in that kind of environment if we're willing to ask people the question that nobody else is.
So inspiring. We're going to show the website, and as we scroll on the website, tell us about the kinds of organizations, associations, companies, and CEOs that you like to work with.
Yeah. So we're, as we say, we're an advisor to 8, 9-figure CEOs. So we're really looking at, we say that because it typically is, from a business owner perspective, something that is privately owned in the sense that, you're in the 50 to 200 people employee area. That pretty puts us anywhere between the 20 and $100 million revenue space. And we really focus on that from an advisement standpoint, because when there's systems like EOS, and I'm sure if you read the book Traction or Rocket Fuel, and there's all these different varieties, the system in and of itself is great. If you don't work the system, though, the system doesn't work. And so my intent is to get in an organization from a perspective that says, hey, first, if I'm going to work with your team and you're the CEO and leader, and I'm not working with you one-on-one, I do not want to work with your team, because I have no desire to be another advocate for a change that you are not willing to make. And so if I can have a foothold, if you will, in your life and what you are doing in your marriage or your partnership or where you're going or what you are doing, almost always the thing that we see inside of a business is directly related to the thing I see inside of a leader.
And it's so important right now, especially because of Gen Z. I remember when I was growing up, my age was, hey, kid, life is not a bowl of cherries. Suck it up, pay your dues. And these days, Gen Zs will, join a company, look around, and after a week say, I'm out of here.
That's right. And then the reality is that where we are today versus where we were, even let's just go back 10 years. If I am in a position where there's an X amount of dollars I'm looking to make, the likelihood that I can go make that money as a single person on my own, again, given there's a whole barrier of things to get through, but let's say that we've arrived there, I can go do that on my time with high autonomy, and I don't have to deal with all this other bureaucracy or corporate things. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut my expenses a little bit. I'm going to DoorDash, and I'm going to start my marketing business, and I don't have to deal with any of you people. And so I think because of that, there's something really important for us to note. Every person that comes into your organization, if you're a CEO watching, every person that comes into your organization at work, they will not care about your business as much as you do, because it is not their business. And where you get frustrated is that you turn your business into their busyness, and then you want to micromanage something they say they are an expert at doing, but you refuse to let them to do it because ultimately you care more than they do, and you're supposed to. But if you cared about them as much as you cared about your return, I bet you would find the return you get from them would be greater than what you're getting now.
Give me one of your favorite success stories.
Yeah, so I had a client of mine, he had an organization, exited at 34, retired, was ready to go, living his very best life. Come to find out, started another business about 8 months later. I met him right at that time, and he had everything that we say we want as entrepreneurs and business owners. He had the zeros in the account on the correct side of the comma. He had the house, and he had the marriage, and he had the kids, and he was moments away from divorce. Terrible relationship with his kids, and started a business another way that he did before, and probably could have exited it, but everything else in his life would have been exited as well. And so it was a beautiful picture of 6 months. I challenged him. I said, you work with me and just let's give, at minimum, I need you to give as much energy to yourself as a human being as you're willing to give your business. And let's see if something changes. And he was down 35 pounds, started therapy, saved his marriage, great relationship with his kids, hired a bunch of people. And he works half the time as he did before, making twice as much money because he focused on who he was as a human before he focused on his ability to perform.
Wow, you have an extraordinary gift to be able to not only read the situation, but get the trust of the individual to be vulnerable. Talk about that, why that's so powerful.
Yeah, I think oftentimes most of us walk around, and if you're watching, I can tell you the one thing in life you have thought about today more than anything else. And this is because you're a human, not because you're bad. You've thought about nothing today more than you've thought about yourself. And every email you sent, every LinkedIn message you sent, on every person you talked to, and every staff you had, and every relationship you called. When you called your grandma, you know why you called her? Because you didn't want to feel bad about yourself. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. Me too, because I'm a human. However, when we can create the kind of environment where we pause long enough, we say to assess, when you can pause long enough to assess, and someone's willing to ask you a question that typically we're only willing to ask ourselves, and rarely do we even tell ourselves the truth. It's amazing the kind of ground that you can pick up. And I think most of us, if I've found in the last couple of decades of my life, most of us really, really want someone to finally see us and understand us. But oftentimes you feel misunderstood, not because I can't understand you, because you lack the language to communicate who you are in a way that's actually understandable.
Well, one of the things I love about Rocky, not just his energy and his wisdom, but he gives away the gold. You don't have to hire him to speak to get some wisdom from Rocky. I went on his different social media platforms and I found one of the tip videos. Let's go ahead and roll that.
When it comes to creating a different change in our life, why do you consistently believe that you must do it by yourself when the reality is you didn't get to where you are by yourself? What is it that is driving that in you? What is preventing you from asking for help? Because I think if we could really get into that, that would greater determine and greater define for us when it comes to what are we waiting for. See, I think our waiting is this idea that if we hold tight, if we keep the same place, if we just don't make a move, then there will be a solution that shows itself, so I didn't in fact need to ask anybody. If I could just think about it a little bit longer. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that you waiting means that it's always a problem, and you waiting means that you can't solve it, and you waiting means that there is not an answer. That would be foolish. I actually believe there is a way that you could wait long enough, and at some point something will show itself. Either whatever the problem is will go away, the problem will rear its ugly head, and you'll be forced to face it on the day you were ill prepared to face it. Or could you condense time by asking for help?
I love these tips, and I know so many entrepreneurs who say, you know, I'll sleep when I'm dead, and they're burning the candle at both ends in the middle. Maybe talk about the importance of self-care.
Yeah. Let's start with this. Self-care and self-worth is not selfish. And so I think for many of us, especially my age and even we get older than me, that's really probably the number one thing that I have to push into business leaders and business owners is to that end. Self-worth and self-care is not selfish. There's a distinct difference between service and sacrifice. And I think for many of us, especially when we're in that 35 age and up, we spend a lot of our life confusing service for sacrifice. And so let me give you a working definition and see if this just helps in how you pursue the next 30 days of your life. Let's go 45 days to get to the end of the year. As you wrap 2024, ask yourself every place you believe you are serving. Is it an overflow of who you are because of your care for them? Or is it a loss of yourself in hopes that they will care for you? Service is an overflow of who I am because I care about you. Sacrifice is a loss of myself in hopes that you'll care for me. I think many of us get it confused, and that there's a great opportunity in your life in 2025. If you want to see your life differently, then you're going to have to learn how to fill yourself with self-care, self-worth, so that the overflow of that is to the benefit of the people you love most, not the loss of yourself in hopes that someday it will come back, and I'm doing it for my family in hopes that they'll love you.
So wise. We're almost out of time. So Rocky, if somebody's watching this and says, I have just found my advisor, they reach out to you through the website?
Yeah, so you can go to rockygarza.com, click that contact button up in the corner. We'd love to get to you. If you're just interested in exploring more and knowing what we have going on, you can go to rockygarza.com/beyond success. And there we have our link. And so it's evergreen on our next virtual event we have. We would love to have you join us. We have those every couple weeks to come and see what we're doing, to get an idea around the Beyond Success system and what does it look like for you to build a life on the intersection of a deeply meaningful life and a wildly successful career.
Outstanding. What an amazing segment. We're going to leave you again with the website, which is rockygarza.com, the great Rocky Garza. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate
You
it.
bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.